I've
what it
been,
is? You know what? How you know where that comes from, right?
yeah, all the kids that I surround
All the
myself with these
kids.
days.
That's right. Totally. You'll build up your immunities, Dan. It won't happen anymore.
Dang kids.
Yeah.
One of them actually just admitted it. She was like, "Yeah, I was probably the one who got you sick." I was like, "Come on."
Oh, geez. Well, it's not like they can't go to school or whatever. It's going to happen. It's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Um,
So Dan,
anyway.
tell us about this presentation and where it came from.
Yeah, so I saw this presentation. I believe it was at Mega Camp this past year,
Mhm.
and thought there was some really great information. I talked to Steve about it last week. I thought it would be a good topic for us to discuss today as part of our profit share class, because profit share is all about building wealth, right? Wealth is all about financial freedom, and creating a legacy for yourself. So I'd like to kind of just walk you through it, and then what we're going to do is so I'm assuming that's Tamamoto.
Yes, it is. I confirmed it.
Gotcha. So what I'll do is I will actually there's actually a worksheet for this as well, which I'll send out to the three of you, to Tama, well, to all of us, I guess. No reason why Carlos and Steve can't participate as well. Um, I'll send it out to Donna, Tama, Jen, everybody, so that you can kind of work through this as well. This is something that I started thinking about a couple weeks ago when I found it, brought it up to Steve, just because um, I had kind of a realization this past year around profit share, around wealth building, and kind of created some new goals for myself. But this class at Mega Camp kind of shifted my perspective a little bit on that. Um, so I'm actually working through this right now for myself, in kind of planning out my 2022 goals. But I thought it'd be good. So first and foremost, you know, we always start with definitions, right? If we're going to talk about financial freedom, let's start by defining it and what that means. And this might be a little bit different for everybody, but the definition that they use here, which I really like, is essentially financial wealth or financial freedom is when your unearned income is great enough to finance your life mission without having to work, right? And that comes straight from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Um, another definition of financial freedom from the Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, right? Um, it's
That's
priceless,
the
right?
best. I love that. That is so awesome.
Exactly. And that's kind of how I define financial freedom, right? Um, another great definition of it, like that I'm going to paraphrase here from the Simple Path to Wealth, is it's FU money, right? It's having the ability to again, not be tied to a job, or not be tied to anything or anybody, because you have the income and the savings, um, and the worth, the wealth, right? That allows you to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, right? How else would you define wealth? Any takers?
Well, without jumping ahead, again, I looked at this presentation when you first sent it, Dan, but I didn't look at it recently. I mean, do we go on to talk about your freedom number? Like, what is
Oh
that
yeah, of
number?
course.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. There was a time when we had the Profit Share Club here in Stanford 4 years ago, maybe. And we really dove into that and analyzed it, and people really got excited about that. So that's that number that, guys, that sets you free, right? That if you
Yeah.
had that number on a monthly basis, literally everything that you want in your world, in your life, like it says in the first definition, would be taken care of, and you'd have absolutely nothing to worry about. And that includes, like, if you've got, elderly parents that are going to need some care in a few years or whatever, and anything that in a perfect world, you'd want to be able to take care of. And that, to keep that as a target, laminate it, put it everywhere you look. I mean, it's a real driving kind of cool force.
You guys like my Mickey Mouse mug?
Can't see. Oh yeah, there's Mickey. I see it now.
April and OC got this for me when they went to Disney World earlier this year. So
Does that make you feel better when you're sick, Dan?
it is. It's my comfort mug when I'm home.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
So that the question that we asked, though, right, is what does financial freedom mean to you, right? What would you do if you had financial freedom? right? What would your
Travel.
life look like? Tama, yeah.
Travel,
Travel.
travel.
Where would you go?
Just not everywhere, but the first thing I want to do is I only have about 7 states left to see in America besides Hawaii and Alaska. And they were all out northwest. I would fly out to Oregon, rent a car, drive all around up the northwest of the United States, and then be able to say I've seen. And,
So I'm
That's
gonna take
awesome.
a stab at. I'm gonna take a stab at this. I'm guessing it's Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota.
you got it.
Woo!
So
I-
I only have left North and South Dakota, Wyoming and Montana.
You want to come with me?
Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome.
and I'll drive.
So I have a few more than that. I've got
I do too.
I've got Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, but not South. I've done South, North Dakota.
All
and
right, here's a
then-
question for you guys. Have you all been to Kansas?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Wow. Why?
And I've driven across
I
the
saw.
country.
Yeah,
Ah.
I saw Pearl
And
Jam
once
play in
by
Kansas
myself,
City.
home by myself. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I went to Kansas to see Pearl Jam.
Oh, wow. Really?
That's why I went to Kansas.
Awesome.
I used to work at a company that had a facility that I was out there often.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've got, let's see. So I haven't counted this in a while. I've got Idaho, Montana, North Dakota. I've technically been to Wyoming, but I haven't really visited it. So I like to include Wyoming on the list. And
I
then
haven't been there.
Arizona and New Mexico. Those are my 5.
Oh, got to go to
Yeah.
Arizona and New Mexico.
Yes.
They're awesome.
Beautiful. And for me, it isn't just having driven through. You have to have spent the night,
Yes.
Right.
at
Right.
least one night. Yes.
Been
All
in
right,
a couple
all right.
of airports, but not counting that. But I lived in Arizona for a while. If you ever got the, you enjoyed my Philadelphia, I'll get you through Arizona too.
So aside from travel, guys, what else does it mean?
What else does it mean?
Relaxing. Like I feel, 5 years ago, every time I spent a penny, I had an anxiety attack. And just
Mm.
not having that, if you see something that I like that kind of FU money, you just happen to see, oh, a painting and you really like it instead of saying, too much to buy a beautiful painting that would bring me great joy for the rest of my life.
Mm.
So I'm it, but just being able to make that decision and then really make the decision, not, I just can't have it.
You know what's interesting? I'll tell you a quick story. I mean, just 2 days ago, I ordered online a pair of Uggs for our daughter in college, right? Because it's going to start to be that kind of weather, whatever. And she needs a good pair of boots, whatever. And I also ordered her these kind of, you see the girls wearing these fuzzy moccasins from LL Bean.
Right.
And I can remember back when she was younger, and she's always been a bigger girl, right? And she has large feet. She'd kill me if she heard me saying this to you guys. She's got very large feet. And I can remember when
It's being
she wanted
recorded, Steve. What are you doing?
She's
Yeah.
not.
But,
not
no,
even-
but seriously, I mean, I can remember back when she was like in
That
seven.
large means big feet. Trust me, I'm
Oh, gotcha.
for a big girl.
Gotcha.
No.
So there,
Yeah.
but there was a time when we couldn't buy her Uggs. I'm like, at the rate at which you're growing, I'm not going to spend $200 on a pair of boots. And I back then I was like, we really can't spend $200 on a pair of boots for you. So when I was ordering these, it just hit me. And I know it seems silly, but I was like, you know what? I'm ordering these and I'm not thinking about it. And I really like the position that I'm in right now. And it was just a really big aha moment for me. Yeah, so it was kind of cool.
So there was something that I heard on this concept, I think it's like in the last 2 weeks. So I'm a little bit older than most of these people on the call. So I have paid for my parents in their older age to be in an Alzheimer's facility. That was for my mom.
Wow.
My son's grown, paid for college, all that kind of stuff. But here was the concept. It was not just what you would do, it's also what you will never do again.
Mm,
And I thought, well, there you
Interesting.
go. Like blow the
That's-
autumn leaves that just fell. Yeah, somebody
Yeah.
else will be doing that this year.
right.
Yeah, it's like, so I'm
Love
never
that.
doing that again. Yeah.
Right.
love
There
that.
you go. That's awesome.
I like that.
So So for me, financial freedom would also consist of more of a relaxation mode, so that I'm not panicking about when the leaves fall and not panicking about the monthly bills. I want to be able to cover everything and, and still have a lot of money left over, which would make me more calm.
Mhm. Definitely.
Oh, and buy my RV and travel.
There you go. Put that on a list. Put that somewhere laminated, Jen. I want you to look at it.
Which RV would you buy?
We've been looking at the Winnebago Echo, I think it's
Oh
called.
my God, I love that one.
That's funny.
It's awesome. It's brand new. It's a brand new model. It's got
Yeah.
this crazy bathroom where the shower is like
Oh, yeah, and the
hidden behind
toilet.
the wall.
Yeah.
And then you like whole wall rotates and like covers up the toilet and like the shower now becomes a shower. It's crazy. Love it.
You guys have to get together and have a lunch and discuss this further.
Kidding. Wow.
Can we take,
Uh,
go to the northwest corner of the United States? Will you come with?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
maybe we all have to pitch in and like we'll just drop the RV somewhere and then somebody else flies out, takes it for a little
There you
while.
go.
They
Fly
have people
back.
to do that. They have people to do that.
I
Yeah,
know.
that's true.
Love it.
A lot of my dog show friends do it that way.
Love that. That's how I'm going to travel so one of the things for me is to be able to take a year or two off where I can live completely remotely because I want to drive the entire Pan American Highway from Alaska all the way down to Ushuaia in Argentina.
Awesome.
Right. But but my alternative plan is to kind of do what we just said, right? Which is drive segments of it at a time and leave the vehicle in a place, fly home, fly
Mhm.
back, right? Do more of it, fly home, that kind of thing. But anyway, all right. So I love this. That was great, right? Now that we're
Totally.
able to kind of picture what financial freedom looks like, the next question we have to ask is, well, how do we think about money, right? Because people tend to think about money in three ways, in three mindsets. The first is around abundance. The second is around consumption. And the third is around scarcity. And the thing that I loved about the conversation we just had is that we touched on all three of these, right? We talked about some of the things that we've had to do in the past or some of the ways we thought about money around scarcity, right? Not having it. Some of the things we had to do because we didn't have the financial means, right? To pay for alternatives, or the things that we didn't get to do or didn't get to buy, right? Because of a lack of finances. We also talked about consumption, right? But we also talked about abundance and what our life would look like if we were financially abundant, right? And it's really important to understand those three mindsets around money. And it's not that we need to be in one or the other or not in one or whatever. It's important to have to be able to take all three mindsets in various situations, right? But it's also important to recognize the three and recognize which mindset you're in when you're making decisions. So where would you say, what mindset do you think is kind of your dominant mindset, so to speak? And what are some of your thoughts around money?
I'll go because, I've been in transitional state for a year and a half. Well, actually 5 years since I moved back, but my mindset this past year has been on making sure I save and work hard so that I could buy myself a townhouse after mom passed, and that came to fruition. And I think because I put my head down with that big goal, it really did help me, push through and sell a lot more houses than I have, and more importantly, sell that $1 million house, which became my down payment. So it was a different mindset from, okay, I'm working hard to take care of my mother, to, hey, I'm going to buy myself a place to live.
Right. So would you say that what kind of mindset would you say drove the results you achieved this year, Tama? Abundance, scarcity, or consumption?
I actually almost want to start with, if you go to Maslow hierarchy of needs, it's the lower level. So almost scarcity to begin with.
Oh,
And,
interesting.
yeah, because I needed, safety and lodging and all that other stuff. So I think up front it was scarcity. And then it started flowing because I had that, desperation is really a good word to describe it too, is that I got to make sure I do this, and that I can take care of myself. And that started maybe 2 or 3 years ago before mom passed. But, I'd given up a really good corporate job to come back here and put mom first. And, first year of real estate, you don't make any money. So I think, I don't know, scarcity, and then it went to, and I don't think I'm at abundance yet. So whatever's in between scarcity and abundance might be where I am at now.
Well, let me ask, and I'm going to ask first for your permission to kind of dive into this, to dig a little deeper, if you're okay with that, Tama.
I am.
Just because we've had conversations around this, right?
Mhm.
A year ago, were you even in a mindset of considering buying a new home for yourself?
Not at all. I was such a depressed state, that I was willing to stay in my mom's house and buy out something that I didn't really want because I didn't know what else to do.
So what shifted in your mindset that allowed you to think bigger?
I don't know what shifted or shifted. I think part of it was, stop feeling sorry for yourself, get out of bed.
What was that? Sorry, either I was breaking up or you were breaking up, or something in between, but I missed a little bit of the end of that there.
At some point I said, stop feeling sorry for yourself and get out of bed, and you're a survivor, just do it.
Mm-hmm. And when did the idea of being able to buy your own home, that's something that was yours, really kind of come to fruition for you, or become a possibility for you?
In all honesty, once I was selling enough houses that I was like, hey, I can do this. I don't have to buy
Mhm.
out my brother out of my house I don't want to live.
Okay.
And then when I started looking and saying for what I was going to pay my brother, I could live it started off being, I can live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Danbury and not the best section of town for the same price as buying my brother out. That's where that one started. And then it got to, wait a second, the interest rates are so low, I don't have to rent, I can buy. So all the things that we say to our clients,
Yeah.
I started saying to myself.
Right. And so what I'm hearing you like, the change that happens, that where you start changing that thinking, is a change in mindset first, right?
Yep.
And then suddenly when you start thinking about possibilities and options, I like to think that comes from a place of abundance, not scarcity. When you're in a mindset of scarcity, you can only think about what's right in front of you, the problems that you have right in front of you, the options that are being handed to you, right? Or the obvious option. When you start thinking in a mindset of abundance, that's when new possibilities come to light, right?
Mm-hmm.
And new ways of thinking, and I think that's really, really important to recognize.
And I just want to say something, that then after, when you recognize it, Dan, it's like, why didn't I see this before? As a musician, sometimes you listen to some of the riffs that some of the guys are playing and you're like, that's so easy. Why didn't I think about this before? And that limits you, right? But then when you see the other side, then it kind of, the whole success begets success.
Yeah.
I'm a assistant team leader, so my number one job is recruiting and retaining and helping the staff make sure that everything's okay. But profit share didn't ring a bell until I got a $400 direct deposit, and at that month I needed to make a $400 payment, and I said, "What the crap? This thing works." And then after that, I've been looking harder and harder and harder for more folks all over the country. Cause I saw something that I hear these guys making all this money and I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. I make my paycheck either way. But then when it's like direct deposit of $420, I was like, oh my gosh, it was a Saturday. And I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's crazy. And I went into Wells Fargo and I was like, maybe I'm like seeing things differently. No. And I was like, I didn't think about this before, like you guys are mentioning, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, I mean, so I'm not, I'm not saying this to brag or anything like that, but, my first profit share check, I think was 26 cents. That was my first profit share deposit. Last year I made over 16 grand in profit share though. And I set a goal last year. I was like, okay, if I could do 16 this year, like, could I do 25 next year? Right. And I'm kind of on track for that. I don't know, because profit share is a little bit tricky, but I had a really, really big month of profit share this past year in this year. And that was what shifted my mindset around wealth. And that was when I went to Rick and I told him this. I said, I've always kind of used $75,000 of income as kind of my baseline, right? It's like, that's going to be my base. I'm going to hold my household expenses, things like that, to that baseline, so that anything above that, I get to choose what to do with it. And then from that, my realization this year was, well, what if I was just earning that in passive income? And I got to use all of my regular income for whatever I wanted it to be. Right. And that's kind of like and so it's like, as soon as you start to get a little bit, like you were saying, Carlos, right? Like, you can shift your mindset really, really quickly. Whoa, wait, hold on. This money just shows up. That's financial freedom. Right? When the money just shows up. All right. So how do you get there? We're going to work through this a little bit quickly, because this is really stuff that you need to kind of do on your own. And, but so how do you get from where you are today to financial freedom? And the first thing is to get real about where you are, right? And the best way to do that is to determine your net worth, right? So Tama, you're a new homeowner. So guess what? That means that you have a great asset, right?
Thank you. I've been told that.
Right. Again, I think I'm trying to remember where, I think it was, I don't remember which government department, but they just released another survey back in September and determined, and I saw a bunch of agents have been posting this from like the Real Matters posts or whatever, but it was something like homeowners added about on average $51,000 of equity in the past 12 months. Right. The average homeowner in this country has a net worth of $200,000 is the average net worth for somebody who owns a home.
Interesting.
Well, here's what's really interesting. The average net worth of somebody who does not own a home is $6,000.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Right. That number, the $200,000 number went up a little bit this past year. That's the highest it's been, like the highest average it's been in years. So let's get real. Let's talk about let's figure out where we are. What do you own? All right. And then what do you owe? Right. What is your mortgage balance? What do you have? Car payments, credit cards, student loans, right?
And I'll just jump in and say, don't be afraid to do this, because a lot of people are, right? Because of the number that they may see in that net worth line.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point, to be conscious of it and aware of it and track it every month.
You can't
something that-
change it if you don't know what it is.
Right.
That is something I've always been pretty good at. And one of the things is, if I think of my net worth, I have 401ks and retirement funds and stuff that people would be pretty impressed with. my ex-husband happened to write 401k plans. So we put all our money into 401ks and didn't have groceries, but that's another story. But thank God we did that when we were young people. And I wanted to not look at that as any asset, like usable income. If I need it, I can go get it, but I don't want to. I want to pretend it's not there. And so in the past year, or the past couple of years, my big goal was to make sure I had zero debt. And that is what brought me to the position where, I got really good rates on interest rates when I bought my house. And I had no debt. So really, I have a car debt and that's it. It's
Yeah.
only $12,000. So it's not like it's a lot of money.
That's great.
That's awesome.
And yet 5 years ago, my 5 credit cards were maxed. I had a loan that I took out, to start my real estate business. I was in a lot of debt back then. And now I have a few things now just because I bought them for the house, but I'll get to that soon. But in general, it's
Yeah.
I have debt. And that's something I'm pretty proud of. That was hard.
And you should be, right? Now, here's the thing, like, I understand you're not wanting to touch the retirement savings, and you shouldn't, right? But you
Right.
should know where you stand, right? So you should definitely count them from a net worth standpoint. You might not
Oh,
want to count them from an income standpoint, right? Because
Yep.
because the whole point of those of those types of plans is to put the money aside and let it grow, right?
Right.
So you might not want to count that from an income standpoint, but it'll be really important to know where you stand for this next step, not this step, because this is like kind of a second step. That's the that sets you up for the third piece, right? Which is discover your burn rate, right? What are you spending each month? What is your average? What is your current lifestyle costing you? And so the recommendation is to take 3 months of bank and credit card statements. Anywhere that you spend money, you want to collect statements for those accounts. And you want 3 months because every month is going to be a little bit different, right? 3 months tends to give you a good average. You're going to add up all of your total spending for those 3 months and then divide it by 3. All right. And that'll give you a solid average. If you really want to get like crazy about this, do 6 months. Make sure to include the holidays and things like that. Months of the year where you tend to spend more money, maybe. All right. That'll give you a better blend, or a better average, or a more realistic. You're better off being higher here than lower in your estimates. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Because then the third step is to figure out your freedom number, which is what Steve was talking about before. All right. And what that means is, based on your 3-month average, how much annual income do you need to cover your costs? Jennifer, question? Yeah.
Yeah, the slide we just left, when you're calculating what you've spent, does that include, of course, I guess it does. That includes your utilities and
Everything.
everything.
You want to count every dollar you have,
Okay.
or every dollar you spend,
Mhm.
right? Because that is, one of the tendencies people have is they don't look at what they're totally spending. They look at, okay, well, what my mortgage payment is this, my car payment is this, my utilities are this, I'm spending roughly this amount on groceries, blah, 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 right? And they kind of look at but then what they might realize is that there could be thousands of dollars that are getting spent on other stuff on average, right? And they don't think of those things because they're like, well, I don't buy a lot of clothes. Yeah, but if you go shopping once, twice, 3 times a year, something like that, right? If like clothes isn't really a big thing for me, right? But I do tend to probably shop 2, maybe 3 times a year on stuff. Well, I might not have that in the months that I'm thinking about, but I know that money gets spent at some point, right? And so it's important, like when you're thinking about your freedom number, you don't want to necessarily go backwards in lifestyle, right? The goal is to be able to continue in your current lifestyle or live better than you currently are, right? And so take into account all of your spending, not just your household spending. If that makes sense.
Yeah, right down to even what you spend on Starbucks in a day. I mean, the
Yes,
whole
which
thing.
when looking at my
I mean,
past
to
few
go to the
statements, I've
movies, if you
realized
buy
has become a
popcorn.
little bit out of control the past
Right.
month or so,
Mhm.
right?
Clarity is power.
Taza and Starbucks are getting too much of my money right now,
Huh.
right?
Taz is just too close. That's not
It's
fair.
really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah.
And Philippe's such a nice guy, and their chai lattes are just way too tasty. Um, that and their salads. All right. So divide by three. Take 3 months of expenses, divide by 3 to create your monthly burn rate, and that's going to give you your freedom number. So, let's say you're spending 5,000 a month. That's 60 grand a year. All right. What you need to do is figure out what net worth you would need to have in order to achieve $60,000 of passive income. And the way we do that is using the 4% rule. So it's generally accepted that if you were to withdraw 4%, if you had a high enough net worth that was developed, and you looked at a 4% return on your net worth, right? Meaning if you have $100,000, you're going to earn $4,000 a year, right? And if that $4,000 a year, right? So if your freedom number was $40,000, let's say, right? You would need a net worth of $1 million in order to guarantee $40,000 of income every year.
Yep.
And where that 4% rule comes from is if you just have that $1 million, let's say, invested in pretty safe investments like stocks, or index funds, things like that. Historically, those types of investments have averaged out not just 4% returns, but high enough returns where you could actually take out 4% of that total net worth, and it would continue to grow to a point where you would never have to worry about it not providing that $40,000 a year, that 4% a year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the simple math is once you've figured out your freedom number, you then have to figure out the net worth. All right, which you're just going to do by figuring out the annual income that you need. And then the last piece to it is then dividing it by 4%. Make sense?
Absolutely.
So you need $100,000 a year. That's $2.5 million in net worth invested in secure investments, right? Reasonably secure investments. So then the next piece is what do you have to do to achieve that financial freedom number, and what timeline will it take? And this was an interesting goal, an interesting thing. There's a link on here which I'll be sending out with everything, which is essentially just a compound interest calculator. All right. So essentially says if you take whatever money you currently have, and then it will figure, and then put whatever kind of monthly contribution you want, and then put in a time of year with an estimated interest rate. All right. And how often you want to compound it. So either annually, semi-annually, monthly, etc. It'll actually calculate, how long it's going to take. It'll calculate what value you'll have after that set number of years. All right. So let's say we have $50,000. All right. And we're going to put in $500 a month for the next, I don't know, I'm going to use my age, right? So my goal is now 18 years. I'm going to put 17 years. All right. I'm going to get an average interest rate of, say, I'll use 6%. It's a little low. All right. I don't know if I need to put the percentage in there. All right. And I'm going to compound that annually. So I'll have about 300 grand. So my investment will have tripled. All right. In 17 years. So when I turn 55, I'll have 300,000. Now you might look at that and say, well, that's not enough. I need 2.5 million. Right. So let's add another 10 years to that and say when I'm 65, still not enough. Right. And you can play with this now. Okay, well, maybe I need to do more. Maybe I need to do $1,000 a month. Right. What happens if I get a 12% interest rate instead? Right. And you can just keep calculating. Now we're talking, right? We'll go back to the 17 years and you can just play with this to figure out what you need to, like, what your plan needs to look like in order to achieve these types of results, the results that you need in order to hit your goal. All right. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then it's just a matter of creating a plan around it, right? Okay, well, how much do I currently have? Right. So this number should be pretty easy to figure out. What do I currently have invested? Right? What kind of return am I currently getting? How much am I contributing each month? And then how much longer do I want this to take? And that'll kind of give you an assessment of where you are currently. And then you can kind of create a plan around it by saying, okay, I either need to contribute more monthly, I'm going to need more time, or I need to find a better investment. Does that make sense? Those are essentially the three things. You can't really change your initial investment unless you've got money sitting somewhere that's not really getting you any kind of return and that you're currently looking to invest. All right.
So Dan, that link, when you send them the presentation, that link is live?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Makes
So
sense.
the bottom line is, let's to get you more profit share passive income so that you can then invest.
Yeah. So here's what this presentation doesn't talk about, right? It talks about investing in things that create passive income already for you, right?
Right.
So, because the other option is, you might not need the net worth. Like, you might not be, it might be harder for you to create the net worth that you need to just have, which is just cash sitting there invested in something, right? But you might be able to create investments that provide that income for you instead, right? Here's the interesting part though, is the net worth numbers and the income numbers tend to actually be pretty reflective of each other, right? So let's say, well, I need $100,000, so I'm just going to go out and buy 100 units over the next 15 years, or 20 years. I'm going to buy 4 units a year that are going to generate $1,000 per year of net cash flow, right? So that what did I just do? So yeah, 20, I needed, so I'm going to buy 4 units a year for the next 20 years. That's going to get me 100 units in the next 20 years. And if each of them cash flows $1,000, that's $100,000 a year, right? That's not unreasonable. That means that each unit is cash flowing about roughly a little less than $100 a month. That's a pretty reasonable investment.
Totally doable too.
Like totally doable.
Yeah.
Right. $100 per unit. That's very doable per month. That's very, very doable. However, here's the interesting part. If you were to actually implement that plan, what do you think those 20 properties are probably worth on average at the end of 20 years? Do you think they're going to be close to that $2.5 million mark, which is what we said you needed? The answer is probably, right? Your net worth at the end of those 20 years is probably around that 2.5 million mark. So it's interesting. Like, you have different ways of going about it. You can invest cash in things like securities or index funds, things like that, or you can use cash to develop, to invest in real estate, or you can do things like profit share, which require no investment of your time or money, really, maybe some investment of your time. All right. To build passive income for yourself as well. All right. Questions, thoughts?
Jennifer Davis, don't look overwhelmed.
I have a headache, but yeah, no, not from this, but
Oh, for real. Gotcha.
All right.
yeah, but no, I'm I just, yeah, I'm gonna be working on getting my share of profit share.
All right. So here's what I'd like to do for this week, but between now, for this week and between now and the next week, because there's still more of this presentation that we haven't gone through yet, which is actually putting these things in place. But the first steps, I'd like to kind of go through those first steps, which is, all right, let me bring this back, right? So what is your net worth currently, right? What is your burn rate? And then what is your freedom number and what net worth would help you achieve it? And then in our next profit share class, we'll talk about this third step, which is what kind of timeline would that take? All right. And we'll talk about how you can actually create a plan around this stuff. How's that sound?
Awesome.
Sounds like
Well,
awesome.
okay, but Dan, so my husband is a spender and I'm not. So even though we would look at our burn rate, I'm gonna have him change that. So we'll be working with different numbers.
Well, that's one approach.
Yep.
Here's the other approach though, right? Account for the fact that your husband is a spender. Now what the approach of, well, listen, we need to cut back is good because that's part of the plan that we're going to talk about next time, right? Is after going through your expenses, what are the things that you're spending money on that you shouldn't be spending money or that you could cut back on in order to shorten your timeline, right?
Right.
But it's really important to remember that cutting back and surrounding yourself with limitations, or especially other people with limitations, tends to be a temporary fix, right? There has to be some sort of light at the end of the tunnel for that to work.
The Echo
There has to be some
RV,
sort of tie to a higher purpose, right? Or a higher goal.
the Echo RV is the higher purpose.
There, exactly. Right?
Totally.
But
Yeah.
if you can get clarity and you can get create I'm trying to think of the word here. If the two of you can get on the same page about that, right?
We can.
Can connect in that way, right? If you can both connect to that higher goal, then it's easier to have the conversations around, hey, let's not spend money on whatever your husband likes to spend money on. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we talked about it the other day because he said something like, we don't have enough money. And I said, honey, yes, we do. And I explained to him
Yeah.
how it all works.
Yeah.
And he said,
And where the money
Oh.
could come from. Yeah.
yeah, he said,
Right.
oh, you're right.
Yeah.
So-
And I mean, I think sometimes, Jen, my opinion, like when you look at that burn rate, that could come across as a real negative, right? Because it's like a kick in the pants sometimes when you look at that, right? But with that, you have an understanding and then you create a budget. And it's not that,
Yeah.
your husband can never spend money, but then
No,
you guys
yeah.
determine what you're going to spend your money on.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about budgeting. We're going to talk about planning and kind of connecting to your goals. We'll talk more about that because that's what you have to kind of go through in order to create that plan for yourself. All right. Sound good?
Yes. Good
All
job,
right.
Dan.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. This was more of a wealth building Wednesday than it was a profit share team, but that's okay.
All tied together.
It's all tied together, right?
Right.
Love it.
Good job.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye-bye. See you later.